While I wish I could say that I'm sorry I'm not with you right now, as I stand here this morning thinking about what it means if you're watching this recording on Erev Rosh Hashanah, I am completely thrilled to not be with you tonight, and I can't wait to introduce you to our new addition soon.
I filmed that greeting 3 days before Rosh Hashanah 6 years ago, just in case I had to explain to my new congregation in Bucks County that I wasn't going to be with them because Jason was giving birth to our first child. As you all know, it turned out we had to use that video, as Jason went into labor a few hours before our Erev Rosh Hashanah service was scheduled to begin. While at that moment I was in fact thrilled to not be with the congregation, as I record this greeting for you all tonight, please know that I would much rather be with you. I really thought that that would be the only time in my rabbinic career that I would miss a High Holy Day service. But sure enough, our Rosh Hashanah baby, Eva, who as you could figure out just turned 6 yesterday, and our son Judd, who's 4, both tested positive for COVID yesterday. I know you all know that we are extremely careful, but we do have a handful of neighbor families, all of whom are equally careful, with whom we socialize outdoors. And unfortunately, all of the children have become infected. They're all doing relatively well as of now, and our kids, while the sickest they've been in quite a while, are enjoying a little bit, or a lot of it, of extra TV time. In fact, depending on how good my microphone is, you might hear the movie they're watching during my greeting. While Jason and I, both fully vaccinated, are still testing negative, our congregation's leadership has created an expectation that anyone who would bring extra risk into this community make use of our streaming options during this time. Of course, there was a moment in which I was trying to figure out how to be there, what regimen of testing and quarantining it would take. But of course, by staying at home, I'm in the right place, doing the best thing for my family and for all of you. And just one more reminder, Jason and I are so lucky that we are vaccinated. We can safely take care of our kids, and if we do become infected, we know that we'll be all right. I feel so grateful knowing what capable hands we're all in. I'm part of a phenomenal clergy team, and while I'll still be delivering the sermon this evening and speaking occasionally over the next day, I now get to be a congregant as Cantor Canizaro and Rabbi Weiss lead us in worship this Yom Kippur. I also feel grateful knowing that all of our hard work and preparation ahead of time with our friends at DCE Productions, along with Mark and Jan, means that the experience both in the sanctuary and at home are going to be meaningful and engaging. For me to be at home tonight is just one more way in which things are so different. But I'm so proud of the way in which our Schaarai Zedek family has been able to adapt And just as our choir is with us virtually, and I really need a word other than virtual, because even though they're recorded, the presence of our choir has been very, very real. But we're going to be creative with a few other Schaarai Zedek traditions as well. During Kol Nidre, the custom is to remove all of the Torah scrolls from the ark. And while we can't invite those families we honor this evening by calling them to the bima, we did have them come in earlier this week, each alone in the sanctuary, to have their picture taken with the Torah. So when that time comes, it's our honor first to call this year's Rabbi Richard J. Bernholtz Torah Circle Challenge givers, Cookie and Bookie Buckman, the Alicia, Bob, Angela, Lauren, Matt, Lisa, and Mark Levine family in memory of Michael Levine, and Lee and Saul Rachelson, who were joined by 2 anonymous challenge givers as well, who we also honor. They'll be joined by Cheryl, Stephen, Nathan, and Eric Fisher, Barbara and Alan Goldman, Sharon and Bruce Gobioff, Stuart and Caressa Lasher, and Lyris and Eric Newman, all holding our Torah scrolls on the screen as Cantor Canizaro chants Kol Nidre. That, of course, will be after Scott Kluckstall and Robert Jarash help us enter Yom Kippur with a very special Kol Nidre on cello and piano. I miss you all and look forward to seeing you soon. I wish you all a Shana Tova, a happy and healthy new year, and a meaningful Yom Kippur as we begin our observance together now.
And we want to thank Rabbi Simon for his leadership through all of the challenges that most of us have faced together, preparing us to so nimbly and ably take over when he gets the chance to participate as a congregant from home. And I'm sure that he is participating with us from home. And I am Rabbi Michael Weiss. I'm joined up here on the bima by Cantor Deborah Canizaro, Robert Jarash, who makes such beautiful music for us, and Scott Kluckstall, who will be bringing some of the most beautiful music you'll probably hear this week to us in the ancient melody of Kol Nidre. There are those of us here in the room, there are those of us who are participating in our service from home. For those of you that are here, thank you for coming into this space and making us a part of your lives. For those of you at home, thank you for welcoming us into your space. Here at Schaarai Zedek, we really do believe that when you are with us in that way, your home becomes an extension of our sanctuary. We know that you are here with us, and we feel you here with us. If you're hearing this, then you already know how to join us, probably. You have your choice way to stream, but we're on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku, on our website. We're grateful to the Tampa Bay Community Network for airing us on public access. And while many of us are probably using electronic devices to participate in the service, we really hope that whatever you don't need, your phones, your iPads, what have you, that you can turn them off or silence them, put them aside for just a little bit as we focus on matters of the soul. As we go through our service, you'll find all the liturgy that we're using on our screen or on your screen. These are the words of our Machzor, our High Holy Day liturgy. If a prayer is in the prayer book, which some of you have in front of you, then you'll be able to find it in there. There will be a page number. And if you want to page through, there are all kinds of really wonderful prayers and material in that Machzor. So if you feel the need to get a little bit lost, to look at something a little bit different, feel free to open the book and page around. I'm sure that you will find something that means something to you. Throughout our service, there are moments where we'll be asked to sit and stand. There are some long periods of standing, and if you are uncomfortable or unable, you can feel free to be seated as you need. We know that you will be standing in your heart, but Yom Kippur is not about torturing ourselves or making ourselves miserable, as much as it might seem like it sometimes. If you are fasting and you are really feeling not great, Please, please, please eat something, have a little bit of water, right? In Judaism, our health takes priority over everything. If you need to take medication, it's actually your obligation to take it. If you need a little bit of water to take it comfortably, please do so, right? God wants us to take care of our bodies and our health more than anything else. We would like to welcome our pulpit guests. I won't say virtual pulpit guests because they really are here with us. However they're participating. Our Vice President of Membership and Programming, Allison Singer, our Vice President of Fundraising, Dan Singer, and they will give us some announcements later. And just before we begin, I want to give a really big thanks to Robert, to Scott, to our production company, DCE, who have made this run so smoothly. And I think that they're enjoying this too. They're still humming some songs that we did at Rosh Hashanah to themselves, as are we all. So as we begin this Yom Kippur, Cantor will lead us in lighting the Yom Kippur candles.
We are going to read responsively. The human spirit is the lamp of God, searching out what lies within us.
Guided by the flame of conscience, on this sacred night we search for truth.
Shine your light upon us as we strive to serve you. May we find safety in your faithful love.
We light the flame of healing and forgiveness. On this atonement night we give thanks for love.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel yom ha'bokirim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Amen. We read responsively. Yom Kippur, the Jewish people's festival of the soul, and Kol Nidre, its sacred portal, a night of deep emotions, a night, as the psalmist wrote, to rejoice with trembling.
We rejoice at the sound of Kol Nidre, rhythmic words of release from vows, oaths, and promises to God we fail to keep.
We tremble at the melody, music of spiritual amazement. It fills us with awe as we stand before God and Torah.
We rejoice that we stand together, strengthened by community in this hour of shared weakness and humility.
We tremble because we are mortal. We rejoice in our gratitude for life.
We rejoice with trembling and enter Kol Nidre to face our humanity.
Or Zarua Lat Tzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance and joy for the pure of heart.
Bishiva shel mala, uvishiva shel mata, adat hamakom, ve'adat hakahal, anu mathirin vehit palel, im ha'avayanim. With one voice, assembled sages past and present declare, all may pray as one on this night of repentance, Let none be excluded from our community of prayer. With one voice, God and congregation proclaim, all may pray as one on this day of return. Let all find a place in this sacred assembly.
And it is traditional on this night to recite Kol Nidre 3 times, and to fulfill that, Scott Cluxdale and Robert Drosh will lead us first with cello and piano, after which Cantor will sing, and then we will read the English together. Oh.
Let us rise.
Kol Nidre Late Service.
We read Kol Nidre in English together. Let our speech be pure and our promises sincere. Let our spoken words, every vow and every oath be honest and well-intentioned. Let our words cause no pain, bring no harm, and never lead to shame, distrust, or fear. And if, after honest effort, we are unable to fulfill a promise, a vow, or an oath, may we be released from its obligation and forgiven for our failure. Let our speech be pure and our promises sincere. V'nislach lechol adat b'nei Yisrael, v'lager hagar b'tocham, ki lechol ha'am bishgaga. All shall be forgiven, the entire community of Israel and the stranger who lives in their midst, for all have gone astray in error. Slach na la'avon ha'am hazeh kegodel chastecha, v'cha'asher nasata la'am hazeh mimitzrayim, v'ad hena. Moses prayed to God, as you have been faithful to this people ever since Egypt, please forgive their failings now, in keeping with your boundless love. V'sham ne'emar.
Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha.
And God responded, I forgive as you have asked.
We continue now with our call to worship, Baruch Hu.
We read together. Blessed are you, Adonai. Your great name fills the universe with majestic might. Your word creates twilight and dusk as your wisdom opens the gates of night. Your discernment separates the changing seasons and causes the passage of time. The stars arrayed across the sky reveal your design. You roll out the cycle of darkness and light, shaping day and night. You sweep away day and carry the world into nightfall, setting day apart from nighttime. You are God of all we can perceive and all that is beyond our perception. Living, eternal God, be our sovereign to the end of time. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, creator of twilight and dusk.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kivod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. And you may be seated. We join together in chanting Ve'ahavta. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Truth and faith, these are fundamental to our existence. God alone is their source, and we are Israel, a people of God. Our sovereign saves us from tyranny, redeems us from its violence through countless wonders, from its brutality through great feats beyond measure. We are Israel, a people of God, the giver of life, who would not let our feet give way, the maker of miracles for us against Pharaoh, of signs and portents in the land of Egypt, the one who brought our people Israel from its midst to enduring freedom. Witnesses to this heroic might, the people thanked and praised God by name, freely accepting the reign of heaven. Then Moses and Miriam and all Israel sang to you this song of utter joy.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורות תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה לי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי ודע אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, גיא ישראל.
Amen. We read together. When fears multiply and danger threatens, when sickness comes, when death confronts us, it is God's blessing of shalom that sustains us and upholds us, lightening our burden, dispelling our worry, restoring our strength, renewing our hope, reviving us. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Blessed One, you spread over us a canopy of peace, a shelter of shalom over all Israel, your people, and over Jerusalem.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר את Lifnei Adonai tiraru.
We now rise as we join together in the Amidah.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Komel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'Neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava. Zochreinu lechaim, melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chotvenu b'sefer hachayim, lemancha Elohim chayim. Melech ozer u'moshiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Yisrat Sarah.
Amen. We read together. Your life-giving power is forever, Adonai, with us in life and in death. You liberate and save, cause dew to descend, and with mercy abundant, lovingly nurture all life. From life to death, you are the force that flows without end. You support the falling, heal the sick, free the imprisoned and confined. You are faithful even to those who rest in the dust. Power beyond power, from whom salvation springs, sovereign over life and death, who is like you? Merciful God, who compares with you? With tender compassion, you remember all creatures for life. Faithful and true, worthy of our trust, you sustain our immortal yearnings. In you we place our undying hopes. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of life. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. You are holy, your name is holy. Seekers of holiness, praise you day by day. We are seated. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness. Together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel. May we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of atonement. We read responsively. Our God and God of our forebears, pardon our failings on this day of atonement. Erase our misdeeds. See beyond our defiance.
For Isaiah said in your name, "It is I alone, who wipe away your defiant acts. This is my essence. I shall pay no heed to your errors."
And the prophet said, as a cloud fades away, as mist dissolves into air, so shall your wrongs and mistakes be gone. I will wipe them away. Come back to me, that I may redeem you.
As you said to Moses, for on this day atonement shall be made for you to purify you from all your wrongs, and pure you shall be in the presence of Adonai.
Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael u'tefilatam be'ahava tekabel u'tehil ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael Yisrael Amecha Il karov lechol kore'av b'nei elavadecha v'chonenu shefoch rucha aleinu v'techezena
ותחזינה עינינו
ובכל ציון ברחמים ברוך אתה Adonai המחזיר שכינתו לציון.
We read together. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country that it may always be a stronghold of peace and its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within its borders, health and happiness within its homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship among the inhabitants of all lands, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Inscribe us in the book of life, blessing, and peace. We praise you, O God, the source of peace. And now our choir will lead us in Shalom Rav, our prayer for peace.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam Tasim Le'olam
as we are on this day that emphasizes the inward journey towards making teshuvah, we also think of those going along on that journey with us who are ailing in mind, body, and spirit, those who lie on beds of pain, suffering from illness. We think of those who work so hard to take care of them. For them, we ask for wisdom and courage. And we ask for strength for all families who suffer because someone they know is sick. If there's someone you're thinking of at this time in need of healing, feel free to hold their name tightly in your heart for a moment. And then we'll take all of those names together, all the people we're thinking of, as we sing our communal prayer for healing, Misha Berach.
Sheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We take a moment for silent prayer. I invite you to look within and find the prayers that are written on your own hearts.
Yihyu l'ratzon imrefi, yihyu l'ratzon imrefi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. Oh, may the words of my mouth,
May the words of my
the
mouth,
meditation
of my heart,
be acceptable before you. O God, my rock and my redeemer. O say shalom bimromah. Say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru, ve'imru. Amen.
We come now to vidui, the confession of our communal sins. Both the short and long confessions are said entirely in the first person plural. We have sinned. We have missed the mark. Why? On one hand, it may be to soften the blow. It helps us acknowledge that each of us is imperfect and all of us make mistakes. On the other hand, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel argues that in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. When we let others go astray, when we let injustice happen, we too have done wrong. Let us carry both of these with us, God's collective mercy and collective rebuke, as we confess that we have sinned. Please rise.
צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, אבל אנחנו חטאנו.
We read together. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong. We are seated. And as we come to Ashamnu, our short confession, which is in the form of an alphabetic acrostic, some may choose to lightly beat their chests with each word as we recount our collective sins as an expression of our hope to do better in the future. We repeat each one of these after cantor.
Ashamnu,
Ashamnu,
Baganu,
Baganu,
Gazalnu,
Gazalnu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dofi,
He'evinu,
He'evinu,
Ve'hirshanu,
Ve'hirshanu,
Zadnu,
Zadnu,
Chamasnu,
Chamasnu,
Tafalnu Shaker,
Tafalnu Shaker,
Ya'at Nura,
Ya'at Kizavnu,
Latnu,
Latnu,
Maradnu,
Maradnu,
Niatnu,
Niatnu,
Saranu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashanu,
Saranu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Oref,
Yai,
Yai, Yai, Yai, Yai,
Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu,
Titanu. We read responsively. We have all committed offenses. Together we confess these human sins.
The sins of arrogance, bigotry, and cynicism, of deceit and egotism, flattery and greed, injustice and jealousy.
Some of us kept grudges, were lustful, malicious, or narrow-minded.
Others were obstinate or possessive, quarrelsome, rancorous, or selfish.
There was violence, weakness of will, xenophobia.
We yielded to temptation and showed zeal for bad causes.
You know the secrets of the universe and the secrets of the human heart. You know and understand us, for you examine our inner lives. Nothing is concealed from you, nothing hidden from your sight. Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, we pray that this be your will. Forgive all our wrongs. Pardon us for every act of injustice. Help us atone for all our moral failures. And as we come to the long confession, you can feel free to join in the Hebrew, English, or both as you feel comfortable. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'zadon u'bishgaga, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'dibur peh.
The ways we have wronged you deliberately and by mistake, and harm we have caused in your world through the words of our mouths.
Ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'imutz halev, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha v'tifshut peh.
The ways we have wronged you by hardening our hearts, and harm we have caused in your world through careless speech.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'chachash uv'chazav, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha birchilut.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'flilut, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'zilzul horim u'morim.
The ways we have wronged you by judging others unfairly, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'vidui peh, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'honat re'ah.
The ways we have wronged you through insincere apologies, and harm we have caused in your world by mistreating a friend or neighbor.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'chozak yad, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'masa uv'matan.
The ways we have wronged you through violence and abuse, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business.
Ve'al kulam Eloha slichot, slach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. Al chet shachatanu lefanecha bagalui uvasater, al chet shachatanu lefanecha bifri katol.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, and harm we have caused in your world by losing self-control.
Al chet shachatanu lefanecha begilui arayot, ve'al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'ma'achal uvmishteh.
The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink.
Al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'yetzer hara, ve'al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'neshech uvmarbit.
The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through greed and exploitation.
Al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'latzon, ve'al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'ntiyat garon.
The ways we have wronged you through cynicism and scorn, and harm we have caused in your world through arrogant behavior.
Al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'sinat chinam, ve'al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'vitui sfatayim.
The ways we have wronged you by hating without cause, and harm we have caused in your world through offensive speech.
Al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'elshon hara, ve'al chet shachatanu lefanecha b'tzarut ayin.
The ways we have wronged you with a slanderous tongue, and harm we have caused in your world through a selfish or petty spirit.
Ve'al kulam Eloha slichot, slach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
Ve'al kulam Eloha slichot, selach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu. Ve'al kulam Eloha slichot, selach lanu, mechal lanu, selach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu.
We rise as we open the ark for Avinu Malkeinu. We will read in the Hebrew and then the English, and again, you are free to join in either or both as you feel comfortable. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu, Ve'al Olalenu V'tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Dever V'cherev Ve'ra'av Me'alenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Kol Tsar Umastin Me'alenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu, Malei Adenu Mibirchotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu, Harem Keren Meshichecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu, Na al Tishivenu Rekam Milfanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kabel Berachamim Uvratzon et Tefilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace us.
Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh Imanu Lema'an Shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh Lemancha Imlo Lema'anenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours.
Avinu Malkeinu, Ein Lanu Melech Ela Ata.
Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign.
Avinu Malkeinu, Petach Sha'arei Shamayim Litfilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, Chus V'rachem Aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Va'anenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim, Aseh Imanu Tzedaka V'chesed V'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanol aleinu, ve'alol aleinu, ve'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu,
We are seated. And just as there are so many of us participating in our Kol Nidre service from home, so too will Rabbi Simon as he delivers us his sermon via video.
As I join many of you worshiping from home this evening, I'm reminded of my mom listening to High Holy Day services on speakerphone when she wasn't feeling well enough to attend. That was the best synagogues could offer in those days. We've come a long way since then. Many of you met or at least saw my mom before she passed away 4.5 years ago. If you ever saw her, my guess is you remember her. First of all, she had this bright neon green shirt that somehow she decided was her temple event shirt, and she wore it to every temple event. Her smile was pretty unforgettable too, and she was beaming every time she saw me do pretty much anything as a rabbi. After all, she was the one who had insisted against my dad's better judgment to get me a guitar on my 8th birthday. My dad didn't think it would stick, that it would be a waste of money. But my mom saw the admiration I had for the cantorial soloist at our synagogue, and she believed in my 8-year-old aspirations. She drove me to guitar lessons every week, where I was asking my teacher to show me how to play Baruch Hu. She was the one, along with my dad, who had sacrificed trips for themselves, really anything special for themselves, so that my brother and I could have what we wanted. My parents also made sure that we were able to go on every youth group trip, and coming from Colorado, those were not inexpensive. My mom did everything she could to support my love for the synagogue, my love for music, even my love for theater, which helped me gain comfort speaking in front of large groups of people, or iPads. My mom's smile was because she knew that her sacrifices for and advocacy of her youngest child had pretty directly led to my being able to find a career that made me so happy, and in which I was giving back to a Jewish community that had given so much to her and her family. And she wore that pride in an unforgettable way. That smile may have driven me crazy sometimes, but it also was my reminder of just how much I owed my mom for that support. Now, it is 2021, so just in case you didn't meet my mom, I don't want you to miss out on the visual. Here's that smile on the day I became a rabbi. I don't know which newly ordained rabbi she was taking a picture with there. He looks even younger than that guy who opened the service. That smile was also beaming on my wedding day. And just when I thought I had seen that smile at its brightest, my mom became a grandmother. This was the first time they met in person. I took a picture of the first time they met on video chat right after Eva was born. But unfortunately, it's not a very good one. That was a really rough day physically for my mom. A lot of days were. I'm assuming that you could tell from the earlier pictures, even though those were moments where she was working really hard to not look sick. My mom had a lot that she was fighting against. She was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes at 11 years old. This was a time in which diabetes treatment was nowhere near as advanced as it is today, and the diabetes, along with who knows what other factors, took a real toll on my mom. She was diagnosed early with severe arthritis and osteoporosis and had numerous orthopedic surgeries and serious pain for most of her adult life. She had bad kidneys, she had multiple myeloma, and it seemed like they were always finding tumors somewhere. I hate to say it, but as she would tell me the latest thing that was wrong with her over the phone, there were points where I just couldn't keep track. In this picture, the last we would ever take together, my mom was 65 years old. The house Jason and I lived in at the time had 2 stairs to get in. We rented a ramp for her last 2 visits because she couldn't do those 2 steps anymore. 16 years earlier, when I left for college, my parents moved from the home I grew up in to a townhome in which the master bedroom was on the lower floor. At 49, it was already becoming more difficult for my mom to use the stairs, and a home in which her room was on the 2nd story just didn't make sense anymore. It did have a loft for my brother or I when we would visit, but I still gave them a hard time that when my brother went to college and I wanted his room because it was a little bit bigger, I wasn't allowed because he had to feel comfortable that he was coming back to his home. I hadn't even unpacked my dorm room, and my childhood home was no longer ours. Of course, I understood. We're a family who jokes with one another. But I felt this meant that there had to be more conscious exercising by my mom as a result. They still had the loft, and I remember telling her that it was important that she still try to go up and down the stairs periodically while she could, to make sure she could for as long as possible. I think she tried for a while, but it got harder. And there came to be a point where lying in bed all day in her nightgown, watching talk shows, news, game shows, and more news, beat out so many activities that would have kept her stronger, both physically and mentally. Seeing her in bed like that drove me crazy. She still went to physical therapy religiously, but I didn't understand why she didn't try harder in between. We knew things weren't going to get better, but I wanted her to try to keep things as good as they could be for as long as they could. Her diet also drove me crazy. Remember, she was diabetic since she was 11, but I'm not sure that I remember a day of my life that she didn't cheat. Cheating was what my mom said she was doing when she ate ice cream or cookies. She knew there were healthier options when she needed to raise her sugar, but they didn't taste as good as ice cream or cookies. As she got sicker, the cheating got worse too. I remember one meal, also right after Eva was born, at which she told the waitress she couldn't have black beans in her quesadilla because there were too many carbohydrates. Of course, when dinner was over, she ordered the key lime pie. Again, I thought if eating healthier would slow the deterioration even a little bit, why not try? Here's one more picture of that smile. Don't worry, she didn't eat the whole thing. I tried to talk her out of ordering it, but once it arrived, of course, I joined the rest of my family in eating it. Over the last 10 years of my mom's life, as I saw the deterioration getting worse and worse, I spent more time arguing over these two areas of frustration than I probably should have, and it put a strain on our relationship. I truly believed that a change in her behavior would still give her more time with us and one day with her grandchildren. And I knew that if there was anyone she would listen to, it would be me, her son, the rabbi. But when I brought it up, sometimes I would get an "I know," other times she would ignore me. A few times we were both in tears. "This hurts me so much because of how much I care about you," I remember telling her. It also put a strain in my relationship with my dad. My whole childhood, my dad did most of the work around the house. My mom would be so tired after teaching in the morning and driving my brother and me wherever we needed to go. She would be in bed when he got home from work. As she got sicker, he was her primary caretaker. Of course, there were things that he disagreed with as well, but he defended her to the end. Even though she may have understood intellectually that some things might help in the long run and made her choices regardless, to blame her for her condition was to disregard the countless factors that were out of her control that led her to a point at which no decision was a good one. My dad knew that, and I wish I had understood it better while she was alive. I think she would have been more receptive to my message if I had delivered it with a little bit more empathy. So now, after sharing a little bit about one complex relationship in my life, I want to share another one. It's another in which I feel such deep love and so much gratitude for helping to make me the person I am. It's also one in which the relationship can also at times become strained as a result, but one in which I also must recognize that I can never fully understand the trauma of how they became who they are. I traveled to Israel for the first time in 1998, the summer before my senior year of high school. And while religious school, studying for my bar mitzvah, and confirmation were all extremely important in giving me the foundation of knowledge upon which to grow in my Jewish life, while youth group and Jewish summer camp taught me the important role Jewish community could play in my life, those 6 weeks in Israel inspired a passion in me that nothing else could, creating a connection not only to the land, but to my Judaism as a whole, as a religion, as a culture, and as a people, that no other experience could match. 4 years later, I was on a plane to Israel once again, this time with much more luggage and the task of finding an apartment, as I would be living in Jerusalem for the next 9 months as a first-year rabbinical student at the Hebrew Union College. While security was a concern during my high school trip, unfortunately it always has been. 2002 was a different story. Until Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated in 1995, hopes for peace in Israel were higher than ever on both sides. There was so much optimism after the Oslo Accords of 1993. Meaningful dialogue was taking place between Israelis and Palestinians, both in government and outside. The roads were being paved that could have led to a truly wonderful place. But peace was not what everyone wanted. Hamas and other Palestinian terrorist organizations responded to Oslo with suicide bombings, and a Jewish extremist killed Rabin in order to stop peace talks. By 1998, my summer in Israel, things had quieted down, and peace talks were resuming once again. But once again, those for whom peace was not the goal were able to stop it in its tracks. The Second Intifada began in 2000 as Palestinian jihadists began an increased attack on Israel's military and civilians, supposedly responding to continued growth of the settlements. As I was finishing college, I remember the loss of any sense of security that was left as we saw suicide bombings at restaurants and cafes. And on July 31st, 2002, as I was preparing to pack my bags for my flight to Tel Aviv, there was a bombing in the cafeteria of Hebrew University, killing 9, including Marla Bennett, a 24-year-old from California who was studying in Israel at the time. She was a good friend of many of my friends and future classmates. Extremists and terrorists were winning. Israelis and Palestinians were becoming more divided both within themselves and from one another. The peace process was dying. Many students in my class understandably postponed their year in Israel. Much to my mom's chagrin, I did not. That year, I experienced the resilience of my Israeli brothers and sisters in a way I never could have imagined. Security was tight everywhere you went, but Israelis were living their lives, and so did I. I lived in Israel. I spoke to waiters and salespeople in Hebrew. Sure, they answered me in English, but at least I was trying. I visited Israeli friends from camp in their homes, in their apartments, on their kibbutzim, spending Shabbat with their families. I made friends. I went to movies. I went grocery shopping. I got my hair cut. I paid bills. I heard the stories of so many Israelis. I lived in Israel, and I loved living in Israel. Not until I met Jason, and again when Eva and Judd came into our lives, did I have the same experience of falling more in love every day with something I never thought I could love any more than I did the day before. That doesn't mean there weren't things that bothered me. I saw things that troubled me deeply. But in a strangely similar way to my relationship with my mom, those areas of frustration made me want to see Israel get better so that it would be here for my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. This could lead to a similar strain on that relationship as well, but I recognized more consciously that even after spending over a year of my life in Israel, I didn't fully understand the Israelis' pain, the trauma of having your mere existence threatened at every moment. So many having come to Israel after the Holocaust or other threats elsewhere against the Jewish people, only to lose those loved ones in war after war against those who would completely destroy you if they could. To have nations with nuclear aspirations for whom you would be their first target. To know that making the wrong decision in the other direction could lead to your destruction. This is a threat that, God willing, we will never know. Israel has to have a right to defend itself against attacks. And to deny that is to open the door to a mass destruction. Thank God Israel is good at defending itself. While there were scares and attacks during my year living in Israel, I felt safer there than I have in many places I've lived and visited. I was extremely grateful for Israel's defense force, for the security guards at every shop and restaurant I visited, and for the connection with the United States that guaranteed and continues to guarantee that Israel has what it needs to protect itself from senseless, hateful acts of violence. I also spent my birthday that year in line to receive a gas mask as the United States entered Iraq and fear of retaliation against Israel was high. Thank God I never had to use it, but I learned firsthand the danger Israel faces not only from Hamas, but also from its neighbors. And again, I was grateful for the IDF and for Israel's strong connection with the United States. How to balance that need for security with taking the steps necessary to move toward peace is where that conflict and frustration can arise. The challenge is that while my mom's choices impacted her, with Israel it's much more complicated. The last time I went to Israel was 10 years ago, as one of my closest friends was finishing his rabbinic studies. Josh and I had actually become close on that high school trip 13 years earlier, and he had been living in Israel since 2004. Many of you met him at my installation a few years ago. Josh loves Israel as much as anyone I know, and in living there for so long, he was able to build a connection and have experiences that I had not known. Josh and his wife Yael had been part of a program called Encounter that takes rabbinical students, rabbis, and other Jewish leaders into the West Bank to meet Palestinians. Knowing Josh's experience, I asked him to take me somewhere I had never been in my 4 visits to Israel prior. Josh took me to the other side of the wall, into the West Bank, Bethlehem. Bethlehem is the most tourist-friendly part of the West Bank, but it's not a stop included on the itinerary of most Jewish tourists. I went inside the Church of the Nativity, where most of the tourists stop, but we also took a cab to a restaurant 15 minutes away. We had a beer and a falafel, and probably the best hummus I've ever had. And while being careful, we talked to people along the way. I was a little afraid because I kind of look Jewish. And if I kind of look Jewish, Josh kind of looks even more Jewish. And, and we were walking through the West Bank, getting in a taxi, asking questions and trying to have conversations. And I was afraid because even though I knew that the vast majority of Palestinians want peace as badly as I do, and as the vast majority of Israelis do, I also knew that if I ran into someone who didn't, I could be in a very uncomfortable and potentially dangerous situation. As we had conversations with the taxi driver and the owner of the restaurant, we listened much more than we spoke. And I learned that they had problems like we all do, but theirs were intensified by their conditions about which they rightfully complained. Even if they do support a 2-state solution, how can they have room for hope when they see the continued building of Israeli settlements in the land that would be theirs? When they face the challenges presented by checkpoints, even though they're trying to work and live peacefully with Israel? When they see violent attacks and threats toward their people from extremists and ours? We listened. And while I understood from where much of what they said came, I also saw how much of an understanding they lacked of who most Israelis are and who most Americans are, and the role that Palestinian violence and leadership played in creating those conditions about which they complained. They weren't talking about the tunnels that were built to help terrorists avoid those checkpoints. They weren't talking about Gaza becoming a safe haven for Hamas after the settlements were disbanded there. But even as I disagreed with them, I saw them as humans with stories. Humans who want to live their lives in quiet and peace, most of whom would be happy to do so if they really could, side by side with the Jewish state. Humans who I believed would stand by Israel if they felt Israel were fighting for their best interests. But humans who could just as easily side with Hamas if they felt they had no hope with Israel. A strong commitment to and love of the state of Israel does not mean ignoring the humanity and needs of the Palestinians. Just as much as missile defense and secure borders are necessary for the protection and survival of the Jewish state, so too is an effort to understand the other, and so too is finding partners and methods that will help the other to understand us as well. I am a Zionist. I love Israel deeply. I also believe that for Israel to be here for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, there has to be some kind of resolution to the conflict that goes beyond who can build the biggest bombs. While I support whatever Israel has to do to protect itself from immediate danger, I see that defense as a band-aid that does not cure and can, in fact, worsen the actual ailment. And as we've seen, There is a road that both sides have taken that makes it that much harder to go back. So my voice is often one, for whatever it's worth, that encourages Israel to continue to strengthen its efforts to protect itself in a way that recognizes the pain and trauma of their Palestinian neighbors as well, hopefully bringing closer a time when we won't have to defend ourselves, a time in which we're living side by side with the Palestinians and all of our Arab neighbors in peace, if not in my lifetime, for future generations. But my voice will also be one that is always willing to speak to those who disagree with me from either side, especially if their differing opinion is coming from that same love. But now let me go back to my mom for a minute. Yes, I could challenge some of my mom's behaviors, and yes, our relationship was sometimes strained as a result of my frustration. But there was never a break in our relationship. We both understood that our love was mutual and unbreaking. Not everyone was so understanding, though. She was excluded from former friend groups when it became too hard to have her join. And yes, my mom's social skills weren't the best, but when the Mahjong group at her 55-plus community created a no Vickies allowed rule, that was a bit more cruel than ever could have been necessary. So too with Israel. There is criticism that comes out of love and criticism that comes out of hatred. I sent you all a message during last year's conflict with Hamas in Gaza, reiterating that sympathy for innocent Palestinians cannot lead to sympathy for Hamas or for anyone who's trying to destroy Israel. Israel always has the preservation of life as its goal, while Hamas's goal is destruction of life on both sides, as they feel that leads it closer to its ultimate goal. To support Hamas is to support the destruction of Israel. To use words like apartheid or genocide with regards to Israel is to show a complete lack of understanding of the history and of the current situation. This is criticism with no love. This is blaming the victim. And whether from U.S. representatives or ice cream companies, this is often anti-Semitism. Whether one is enabling Israel or the Palestinians to act without any concern for the other, I believe they are taking us farther from that ultimate peaceful solution. This is a conversation that we can't cover completely tonight, but it will continue. And I look forward to opportunities in the coming year and years to study and discuss Israel's history, present, and future with you all. Hopefully, we can even have a congregational trip soon. My relationship with my mom was far from perfect. But even as we had our challenges, there was never any doubt of the strength of the love between us or the sacrifices we would make for one another. I hope the same is true for all of our relationship with Israel. And just as I wish I had more empathy for my mom, I wish that more in today's world would have that empathy for the threat Israel faces, while maintaining empathy for innocent Palestinians who are also stuck in an extremely difficult place with few positive options before them. The stories are far from direct parallels, but I wanted to present them to you side by side because I think the similarities and differences are both important. I spoke on Rosh Hashanah about teshuvah, about returning to past moments in our lives, learning from them, so that when they repeat, when they return, we will have moved forward, will be better than we were before. I focused on the last 18 months and what we've learned from COVID, but this is also the time in which we are performing teshuvah in each of our own relationships, often with loved ones who can frustrate us, whose decisions we question because we love them unconditionally and want the best for them. We also look at each of our relationships with our own country, a country we also love, to which we're also grateful for the freedom and future it's given us, a country that, regardless of our politics, is sure to frustrate each of us as it makes decisions we think are taking us farther from where we think we should be. I pray that this may be a year in which we can seek to understand those relationships better. And in so doing, I pray that those relationships may find healing, more common ground. I pray that we all may understand that our differing opinions on a variety of issues most often come from that place of love. And when they do, I pray that we may find the space in which to discuss with one another, to learn from one another, and that we in our little corner of the world can be a part of bringing that world that much closer to a place of peace. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will.
Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Galo. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Galo. Baruch, Baruch, et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smichot Geburteinu, Hagin Alecha be'evrat chastecha, Uvrus Alecha suchat shlomecha. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Galo. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Galo.
We are now joined by our Vice President of Membership and Programming, Allison Singer, and our Vice President of Fundraising, Dan Singer, for some important announcements.
Good Yontif. Whether you are joining us in our sanctuary or from home, we're so pleased that you're worshiping with us, and we hope that you'll join us tomorrow morning as well. Our morning services are at 8:30 and 11:30. Both services will be streaming on our website, Facebook, and YouTube, but only the 11:30 service will be on Tampa Bay Community Network. For families with children, our family service geared toward children ages 7 to 11 will begin at 2:30 on our side yard, with the service for children ages 6 and under beginning at 3:30. Also at 2:30, Rabbi Bernholtz will be leading an open discussion based on the short film, Two Strangers Meet 5 Times. The conversation will be held on Zoom, but you'll also have the opportunity to participate from the sanctuary if you like. Shazifti, our high school youth group, will lead a service from the sanctuary at 3:30, which will also be streaming on our website and YouTube. And our Yizkor and Ne'ilah service will start at 4:45. The entire schedule with details can be found at zedek.org/HHD.
For those who are in the sanctuary, a quick reminder to please keep visiting to a minimum after the service, especially at the early service, as we try to make a smooth transition into our late service. We know that many guests are joining us online tonight who wouldn't have been able to be with us if we weren't streaming, and we are delighted to have you. For those who are new to our community, we hope you'll call the temple office soon to speak to a member of our staff or clergy and to learn more about us. While we're so pleased to be able to make our services and programs open and accessible, we also know it's the generosity of our members that has allowed us to do so. If you're able, we hope you'll think about supporting the congregation as well. You can visit zedek.org/donate or call the temple office during the week to make a donation. To our temple members, thank you for your continued support of the congregation. We wouldn't be here without you. On behalf of our families, sisterhood, brotherhood, Shazifti, the clergy, staff, and the board of trustees, we wish you a good Yontif and Shana Tova.
I didn't become a rabbi to be a fundraiser. And luckily at Schaarai Zedek, I don't have to be very often. We offer a program to our community that makes our members want to support what we're doing. It's not a donation, it's an investment in something you believe in. And because of that, Dan, Mark, Rabbi Bernholtz, and I have been amazed at how many of you have come to us anticipating potential needs. As we thank our 5 challenge givers, Cookie and Bookie Buckman, Saul and Lee Rachelson, Alicia Levine, Mark and Lisa, Bob and Angela, and the Levine families, in memory of Michael Levine, and our 2 anonymous givers. I have to tell you, we didn't have to make one phone call. All 5 of them came to us because they wanted to support the temple's work after a year in which that work was a different kind of challenging. They knew that our leadership had to make difficult decisions that weren't always popular, but were the best option possible for a large community like ours. In spite of those challenges, we provided preschool education to our youngest children. We created one of the nation's first outdoor religious schools, and we've now brought our school back safely inside while maintaining the creative methods used during our experiment. Your gifts to the Rabbi Richard J. Bernholtz Torah Circle Fund help make that work possible, allowing us to keep a phenomenal staff and stay innovative with technology and our programming, all while allowing anyone to be a member of the congregation regardless of financial means. And this year, while your Torah Circle gifts continue to support this year's programming, our challenges are going to our Eternal Light Foundation endowment, ensuring that we're able to provide this kind of vibrant synagogue life for generations to come. I hope that if you haven't already contributed to Torah Circle, you'll consider doing so. And I hope that in addition to those annual gifts, many of you will strongly think about supporting the temple's long-term sustainability by contributing to our endowment. Whether as legacy giving or a gift right now, you too can help ensure that Schaarai Zedek is creating Jewish life in Tampa for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and beyond. Either Mark, Dan, Rabbi Bernholtz, or myself, we're all happy to chat with you anytime. And mostly, to all of you who have given and continue to give to this congregation, thank you. Thank you for investing in us. Thank you for making our holy work at Congregation Schaarai Zedek possible.
We begin to conclude our service with Aleinu. We rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'teit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishbechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kecho hamonam, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. My bad. Oops. V'ne'emor v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad.
We are seated. This holy night concludes with memory. Our last thoughts always are of those we have lost. We miss them especially tonight, yearning for their presence at our side. The service we have shared was once theirs. They spoke and sang the ancient words. They prayed, repented, and yearned for better lives, as we have done. Flawed in their deeds, imperfect in their faith, they still drew strength from their tradition as we seek fortitude in ours. What was good and beautiful in their lives once gave us joy, and now inspires us to reach higher. The knowledge that they loved us deeply brings comfort to our hearts. So we light candles of remembrance and gratitude, and we speak this timeless truth. Zichronam livracha. Their memory is a blessing, now and forever. We pray that their goodness will live on in our lives, planting seeds of kindness and hope for generations to come. It is in moments like this where we gather as a community that we feel most keenly the absence of our loved ones who have died in recent days or in years past. Take this moment to think of all of those people who inspired us to be better, to do that work of cheshbon nefesh, the accounting of the soul. And so if there's someone you're thinking of at this time, take just a moment. Picture them in your mind in their kindest and brightest moment. We take all of those precious memories as we rise as a community for Mourners Kaddish, giving thanks to God for those lives that were shared with us. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divarach hiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach leolam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudashah brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And we say together, Amen. So for the moment, when our service ends, Mark is going to let us know which way people should go out. Just the front door?
It doesn't matter.
You can just go out the front door,
Yeah,
or you
go
can
out the
just
front
stay
door.
here, or you can just stay the night because
No.
because this journey is not yet over. We will close with "Return Again."
Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn, and return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn, and return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. May God bless you and keep you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence lift you up and help us to realize that the journey of Teshuvah does not end tonight, and it doesn't end tomorrow. It takes place every day of our lives. And God, may you remind us that the most important thing is that this is not something that we have to do alone, that the sacred connections that we build with others, the communities in which we find ourselves, share with us the resources that we need to do the hard work of returning to our kindest selves. That must have been your plan, God, for us to be here for each other. And we say together,
Amen.
Som Kol, may we have a meaningful fast. And Gemar Chatima Tova, may each of us be sealed in the book of life for goodness. Good Yantav.